Welcome to Starlight Sci-Fi, your home for thrilling science fiction stories that explore the endless possibilities of the cosmos. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more captivating content. What would happen if an alien warlord seasoned in the brutal strategies of intergalactic warfare visited a human military academy, only to leave utterly horrified? This is the story of what happens when the unimaginable ferocity of humanity's tactical brilliance is put on full display. Commander Rathal Vor, supreme strategist of the Talesian Dominion, was not a being prone to idle curiosity. His life had been spent leading fleets across the stars, outmaneuvering enemies with a precision unmatched by his peers. For centuries, the Talesians had maintained their dominance through calculated strategy and superior intellect. To them, war was not just survival, it was an art form. So when the humans extended their invitation to tour their prestigious bastion of strategic command, Vor initially dismissed it as a meaningless gesture. What could a primitive, young species possibly teach the Talesians? But then came the reports. Whispers of humanity's uncanny resilience had reached the Dominion's High Council. Stories of their meteoric rise from primitive infighting to interstellar prominence in a mere few centuries defied logic. They were a species of paradoxes capable of creating music that stirred the soul and weapons that annihilated entire civilizations. The council insisted that Vor accept the invitation, if only to better understand this unpredictable race. Begrudgingly, he agreed, his confidence unwavering. The bastion of strategic command was located in a sprawling compound on the outskirts of Earth's capital city. Vor's arrival was a spectacle, as it always was. His ship, a sleek Talesian cruiser brimming with advanced technology, descended through the planet's atmosphere with an aura of unshakable superiority. As he disembarked, his towering, armored figure cast an imposing shadow over the human dignitaries awaiting him. The humans greeted him warmly, their faces alight with what Vor assumed was naivety. They extended their hands, a peculiar custom he had studied in preparation for this visit, and spoke in a language that felt disarmingly informal. Their demeanor unsettled him. It was not the fear or reverence he had come to expect from other species. Instead, there was a quiet confidence, as though they were as curious about him as he was about them. The compound itself was a strange blend of the archaic and the advanced. Massive stone pillars flanked entrances to facilities brimming with cutting-edge technology. Humans, it seemed, had a habit of preserving their history, even as they hurtled toward the future. Vor found this odd. Most advanced species discarded their past in favor of progress. To the Talesians, the past was irrelevant, a lesson already learned. But here on Earth, it appeared to serve as a foundation for their identity. His escorts led him toward the Hall of History, the first stop on the tour. As he walked, he took in the landscape of the academy. Young humans, cadets, as they were called, moved with purpose, their faces etched with determination. Vor studied them closely. They were not physically imposing compared to Talesians, yet there was something in their movements, a quiet resolve, that hinted at a strength beyond the physical. Unbeknownst to Vor, this was just the beginning of a journey that would leave him questioning everything he knew about war, strategy, and the nature of humanity. At this moment, he still believed he held the upper hand, a belief that would soon crumble under the weight of what he was about to witness. Commander Rathal Vor entered the Hall of History, a cavernous space designed to chronicle humanity's journey through conflict and survival. The air carried a strange mixture of reverence and foreboding, as though the very walls bore witness to the events they displayed. At first glance, it seemed unremarkable. Primitive weapons, faded flags, and crude illustrations lined the initial exhibits. Vor's sharp eyes scanned them with faint amusement. Sticks, stones, and sharpened metal. It was almost laughable. These relics were the tools of a species that once fought for scraps of land and survival. He moved past displays of rudimentary bows, spears, and swords with growing impatience. The description spoke of battles fought in muddy fields, wars waged over resources and pride. While the Talesians valued honor and precision in war, these early human conflicts seemed clumsy, chaotic, and wasteful. Vor nearly dismissed the exhibit entirely, but something about the meticulous way it was curated made him pause. Humans, it seemed, had not only recorded their violent history, they had embraced it as a cornerstone of their identity. As he progressed, the exhibit shifted, The crude tools of ancient battles gave way to more complex weapons. Steel cannons, muskets, and warships reflected humanity's growing mastery of engineering. Vor's curiosity began to stir. The pace of innovation was accelerating. The artifacts no longer represented scattered tribes but organized empires. It was here, he realized, that humanity began to turn war into a calculated endeavor. Then came the Industrial Age displays, and the mood shifted dramatically. Vor stopped before an imposing model of a battlefield from the 19th century, complete with intricate dioramas of trenches and cannons. The notes accompanying it spoke of the staggering loss of life during these conflicts, yet they also highlighted the innovations born from necessity. Humans, it seemed, had an uncanny ability to transform suffering into progress. Vor began to notice a pattern. The more destructive the war, the faster humanity adapted. When he reached the 20th century section, Vor's amusement vanished entirely. Here, the scope of human warfare defied comprehension. Massive displays chronicled 2 world wars that engulfed the planet in chaos. Photographs of trenches, tanks, and aircraft showed a species willing to mobilize every resource, natural, industrial, and human, for victory. The introduction of nuclear weapons was the turning point. Vor stared at an image of a mushroom cloud rising into the atmosphere, its power captured in haunting stillness. The descriptions beneath the image detailed the bomb's ability to obliterate entire cities and leave scars on the earth for generations. Vor read about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and for the first time he felt uneasy. This was not a display of power for conquest, it was annihilation. The Thalassians had never created weapons with such destructive indifference. To them, war was about precision and honor. To humans, it seemed, war could mean total obliteration if deemed necessary. The exhibit's final section detailed the Cold War, a conflict waged in silence and shadows. Vor studied the accounts of espionage, proxy wars, and nuclear brinkmanship. The notion of mutually assured destruction chilled him. Humans had created weapons so devastating that even the threat of their use could dictate global politics. Vor realized this was not just a tactical race, it was psychological warfare on an unprecedented scale. What struck him most was the quote engraved at the exit of the hall, attributed to a long-dead philosopher. "War is the father of all things." Vor lingered before it, absorbing its meaning. For humanity, war was not just a tool of survival. It was a crucible of invention and transformation, a force that shaped their very existence. As he exited the hall of history, Vor's perspective began to shift. He had come expecting to find an inferior species dabbling in primitive conflict. Instead, he found a race that thrived in the face of destruction, turning chaos into progress. And though he didn't yet realize it, this revelation was only the beginning of his unease. The hum of machinery filled the air as Commander Rathal Vor entered the simulation wing of the Bastion of Strategic Command. The room was enormous, its walls alive with holographic displays of terrain, troop movements, and tactical data. Rows of young humans, their faces stoic and focused, operated consoles that controlled simulated armies in real time. Vor was no stranger to war games. The Thalassian Dominion trained extensively through simulations. Yet the energy in this room was different. There was a cold efficiency to the human cadets, a collective determination that felt almost unsettling. At the center of the room was a vast holographic battlefield suspended in midair. It depicted an active combat scenario, a dense urban environment where 2 opposing forces clashed in a chaotic tangle of buildings, vehicles, and infantry. Vor watched as the human instructors barked commands, though they rarely interfered directly. The cadets were in full control, their decisions shaping the outcome in real time. The first thing that struck Vor was the pace. The cadets moved with a precision that bordered on instinct, reacting to enemy maneuvers with lightning speed. Units were deployed to bottleneck advancing forces, supply lines were rerouted to avoid ambushes, and decoy strategies lured enemy troops into traps. Vor was impressed but not yet alarmed. These were standard tactics, nothing the Thalassians couldn't match. But then the simulation escalated. The opposing force, controlled by an AI designed to mimic unpredictable alien tactics, launched a devastating flanking maneuver, cutting off one cadet's supply line and forcing their troops into retreat. Vor expected panic, hesitation, or at least visible frustration. Instead, the cadet acted with calm ruthlessness. They rerouted their remaining forces to create a kill zone in the urban sprawl, deliberately funneling the enemy into a narrow corridor. The strategy was bold but costly. The cadets sacrificed half of their simulated infantry to ensure the maneuver succeeded. Vor frowned. Such tactics were common among desperate species, but these cadets were not desperate. They were learning to use sacrifice as a tool, not an act of necessity. Within minutes, the kill zone proved effective. Enemy forces were annihilated in a barrage of explosives and concentrated fire. Vor watched in stunned silence as the cadet pivoted effortlessly to counterattack, reclaiming lost territory with brutal efficiency. The simulation ended with the cadets victorious, their losses heavy but calculated. It was then that Vor noticed the atmosphere in the room. The cadets were reviewing the battle, analyzing their mistakes with clinical detachment. There was no celebration, no mourning of simulated casualties. They dissected the scenario with the precision of surgeons, their focus on improvement rather than victory. To them, war was not a matter of glory, it was a game of probabilities, and they intended to master it. What unsettled Vor most, however, was the ease with which these humans seemed to compartmentalize their actions. In the Thalian Dominion, even simulated losses carried emotional weight. Soldiers were trained to value every life under their command. Here, it seemed, the humans viewed soldiers, whether real or simulated, as pieces on a chessboard, each one expendable if the larger goal required it. The next simulation was even more disturbing. This time, the cadets faced an overwhelming enemy force. Vor expected them to fall back or attempt a defensive stand. Instead, they initiated a scorched earth tactic. They destroyed critical infrastructure, poisoned supply caches, and even detonated their own defensive fortifications to deny the enemy any advantage. By the time the enemy reached the heart of the simulated city, there was nothing left to claim. Vor's skin prickled with unease. This wasn't just strategy, it was annihilation. The humans had turned their own territory into a trap, ensuring that even in defeat, their enemy would lose. Such tactics were almost unheard of in Thalian warfare, where honor dictated the preservation of resources and territory. As the simulation ended, Vor realized he had underestimated humanity. This was not a species that fought with brute force or even superior technology. They fought with their minds, treating war as a puzzle to be solved. No move was too cruel, no sacrifice too great, if it meant securing victory. For the first time, a flicker of doubt crept into Vor's thoughts. The Thalians had always seen themselves as the galaxy's ultimate strategists. Yet here were humans, wielding not just weapons but ideas, testing the boundaries of what was acceptable in war. Vor had come to Earth expecting to observe a primitive species learning the basics of conflict. Instead, he had found a race that turned the battlefield into a crucible of ingenuity, where survival was not enough, only domination would suffice. Commander Rathal Vor had seen countless war academies in his lifetime, each emphasizing the physical and tactical demands of battle. But as he entered the psychological training wing of the Bastion of Strategic Command, he sensed he was stepping into something entirely different. The atmosphere here was heavier, more unsettling. The air seemed charged with an intensity that was neither technological nor physical, it was deeply human. This place wasn't about perfecting weapons or formations, it was about shaping minds. The first thing Vor noticed was the silence. There were no drills, no shouts of command, no hum of machinery. Instead, the wing exuded an eerie stillness punctuated by the faint sounds of human voices echoing through sealed rooms. He approached one of the observation windows and peered inside. Inside the chamber, a young cadet sat alone in the center of a stark, white room. A series of holographic projections surrounded them, each displaying scenes designed to test the cadet's mental and emotional limits. Vor watched as the images sifted rapidly. A simulated hostage situation, a crumbling battlefield, and finally a scenario where the cadet was forced to choose between sacrificing a small group of civilians or allowing an enemy convoy to escape. Vor's gaze sharpened as he observed the cadet's reaction. Their face remained calm, their breathing controlled. In mere moments, the cadet made a choice, issuing commands to sacrifice the civilians to ensure the convoy was destroyed. Vor felt a chill. The speed and detachment of their decision startled him, but it was the rationale behind it that disturbed him more. Humans were willing to bear emotional pain, even guilt, if it meant achieving a greater objective. As Vor moved deeper into the wing, he encountered more such scenarios. Another cadet was placed in total isolation for hours on end, deprived of light and sound. When the door finally opened, they emerged steady and focused, showing no signs of psychological breakdown. In another room, a cadet faced a simulation where their comrades betrayed them in the heat of battle. Instead of reacting with anger or despair, the cadet calmly adapted, using the betrayal to gain an advantage. Vor began to understand the purpose of this wing. Humans were not just training their soldiers to endure the physical hardships of war, they were conditioning them to confront its moral and psychological horrors. They were teaching them to make impossible decisions, to accept unbearable consequences, and to keep moving forward no matter the cost. What unsettled Vor the most was how thoroughly the humans embraced the complexities of warfare. In the Thalassian Dominion, decisions were guided by strict codes of honor. Morality was as much a part of their strategy as tactics or technology. But here humans seemed to recognize that morality was a luxury, one that often had no place on the battlefield. For them, survival and victory required adaptability, even if it meant redefining their own sense of right and wrong. In one particularly jarring demonstration, Vor observed a simulation where a cadet was forced to work alongside an AI program to argue against every decision they made. The AI questioned their morality, their logic, and even their sanity, pushing the cadet to the brink. Yet the human persisted, their determination unwavering. By the end, the cadet's decisions were sharper, their logic more refined, their resolve unbreakable. Vor found himself both impressed and disturbed. This was not just psychological resilience, it was a kind of emotional alchemy, turning doubt and fear into tools of war. The final chamber Vor observed was unlike anything he had ever encountered. Here, cadets were exposed to scenarios designed to break their minds entirely. One simulation forced a cadet to relive their own failures, amplified to unbearable extremes. Vor watched as the cadet stumbled, visibly shaken by the illusion of their own inadequacy. But instead of succumbing to despair, they rose again, confronting the simulation with renewed determination. By the end, they emerged stronger, as if the pain had forged them into something more. As Vor exited the psychological training wing, he couldn't shake the unease that gripped him. The Thalassians had always believed their mental discipline was unmatched in the galaxy. They valued honor, clarity, and the collective good. But humans operated on an entirely different level. They didn't just train their minds to withstand war, they trained them to thrive in its chaos, to find strength in suffering, and to weaponize their own emotions. For the first time, Vor felt a deep and growing respect for the species he had come to observe. But that respect was laced with fear. These humans were not bound by the same rules as other species. Their minds were their greatest weapon, and Vor realized, with no small amount of dread, that they were willing to wield it without restraint. Commander Rathel Vor had thought himself prepared for any revelation humanity could offer. But as he entered the Hall of Sacrifice, a part of him hesitated. The air here felt different, weighted with a solemnity that went beyond history or strategy. This was not a place of triumph or even tactical genius, it was a shrine to the cost of war. The first display he encountered was deceptively simple, a single glass case containing a battered helmet, scorched and pockmarked from battle. Beneath it, a plaque bore the name of its owner and a brief inscription. They gave everything so others could live. Vor paused, studying the relic. It wasn't just the object itself that drew his attention, but what it represented. For human sacrifice was not merely an unfortunate necessity of war, it was a cornerstone of their culture, woven into their understanding of conflict and survival. The room expanded into a gallery of artifacts and stories, each one detailing the sacrifices of individuals and groups throughout humanity's history. Vor moved slowly, his keen eyes scanning every detail. He read about soldiers who had thrown themselves on live explosives to protect their comrades, pilots who had steered damaged aircraft away from civilian areas at the cost of their own lives, and medics who had refused to leave the battlefield until every wounded soldier was tended to, only to succumb to their injuries. What struck Vor most was the emotional weight of each account. These were not nameless statistics or faceless martyrs. The humans had painstakingly preserved their stories, their faces, and their final moments. Vor realized this wasn't just about honoring the dead, it was about teaching the living. Each story served as a reminder of what humanity was willing to endure to protect its own. As he moved further into the hall, the displays grew darker. Vor came upon an exhibit dedicated to civilian sacrifices during wartime. One section detailed families who had gone without food to sustain soldiers on the front lines. Another described communities that had been deliberately evacuated, knowing their homes would be destroyed to slow an advancing enemy. Vor paused before a chilling display that recounted the actions of a small village during an alien invasion. Knowing they could not fight back, the villagers sabotaged their own water supply and crops, ensuring the invaders could not use their resources. The entire population perished, but their actions slowed the enemy long enough for human forces to regroup and launch a counterattack. The central piece of the hall was a massive, interactive hologram that listed the names of every known human who had died in conflict. Vor watched as visitors approached the display, touching names to bring up their stories and faces. It was a hauntingly personal tribute, a testament to humanity's refusal to let their dead be forgotten. Vor's unease deepened as he realized the depth of humanity's commitment to sacrifice. The Thalians valued precision and efficiency in war, always seeking to minimize losses and preserve resources. But humans embraced the idea that some losses were not only inevitable but necessary. For them, sacrifice wasn't a weakness or failure, it was a choice, made willingly and often with full knowledge of the consequences. One exhibit in particular stayed with Vor. It told the story of an entire regiment that had volunteered for a suicidal mission to hold a choke point against a vastly superior enemy force. The display included their final recorded transmission, a hauntingly calm voice stating, "We're buying time. Don't waste it." Vor could almost feel the weight of their resolve, their willingness to face certain death so that others might live. What disturbed Vor most, however, was how humans seemed to draw strength from these stories. They didn't dwell on the futility of sacrifice or the pain of loss. Instead, they used it as fuel, a reminder of what was at stake and what they were capable of enduring. Vor had always believed that the Thalians were unmatched in their resolve, but here was a species that not only endured sacrifice, they elevated it, transforming it into a force that bound them together. As Vor exited the Hall of Sacrifice, his thoughts were a tangled web of admiration and unease. Humanity's capacity for sacrifice was unparalleled, and it was clear that they didn't see it as a burden but as a responsibility. For the first time, Vor began to question whether the Thalians truly understood what it meant to fight a species like this. These humans didn't just fight for survival or victory, they fought for each other, and they were willing to pay any price to ensure that bond endured. Vor couldn't shake the feeling that he had witnessed something profound, something that set humans apart from any species he had encountered. It wasn't just their tactics or their technology that made them dangerous, it was their willingness to face the unthinkable, to sacrifice everything, and to emerge stronger for it. Commander Rathal Vor stepped into the Bastion's innovation wing, where the future of human warfare was forged. Unlike the previous halls, this space was dynamic, filled with a quiet hum of activity. Engineers worked tirelessly, their hands moving with precision over holographic schematics and prototypes. Vor's sharp eyes darted around, noting the combination of chaos and ingenuity that seemed to define humanity. This wasn't merely a facility for invention, it was a crucible of relentless problem-solving. The first section he encountered showcased advancements in weaponry. Vor stopped before a display of modular firearms, capable of adapting to any environment with the press of a button. These weapons weren't just tools, they were extensions of the soldiers wielding them. Each one was designed with practicality in mind, compact, versatile, and deadly. Vor noted the inclusion of energy-based ammunition that rivaled even Thalian plasma technology. Yet what stood out most was humanity's obsession with redundancy. Every design accounted for malfunctions or failure. Where Thalian engineers sought perfection, humans sought resilience, ensuring their weapons could function under even the worst conditions. As Vor moved deeper into the wing, the exhibits became more unsettling. He came upon a section dedicated to autonomous drones, sleek machines designed for reconnaissance, combat, and support. Their movements were eerily lifelike, their AI tuned not just for efficiency but for adaptability. Vor studied a demonstration of a swarm of these drones infiltrating enemy defenses. They communicated with one another in real time, seamlessly coordinating attacks. If one drone was destroyed, the others adjusted instantly, compensating for the loss. Vor recognized the brilliance of this design. It was less about individual strength and more about collective adaptability. Yet it wasn't the drones themselves that disturbed him most, it was the way humans spoke of them. The plaques and displays emphasized that these machines weren't replacements for human soldiers, they were tools to extend human capability. The humans seemed to understand something that many other species, including the Thalians, often overlooked. Technology was not a crutch but a multiplier. The mind behind the machine was what mattered, and humans had honed theirs to near perfection. One exhibit detailed humanity's use of cyber warfare. Vor had heard of such tactics before, but the sheer audacity of the methods on display here left him unsettled. Humans didn't just hack systems, they turned them into weapons. One simulation showed a human cyber attack dismantling an enemy fleet's targeting systems mid-battle, causing them to fire on their own ships. Another displayed a virus that didn't destroy enemy infrastructure but subtly altered it, feeding false data until the enemy's plans unraveled. It wasn't just clever, it was psychological warfare at its finest. The humans didn't need to destroy their enemies outright, they made them destroy themselves. The final section of the wing was the most alarming. Vor found himself staring at a prototype of a bioengineered virus. The accompanying description detailed how it could be used to target specific genetic markers, incapacitating enemy populations while leaving others unharmed. Vor felt a chill as he realized the implications. This wasn't warfare, it was precision eradication. The Thalians had strict codes against such methods, viewing them as dishonorable. Yet here, humans had developed them with a cold practicality that spoke volumes about their willingness to embrace even the darkest corners of science if it meant survival. What stood out most, however, was the sheer diversity of their innovations. Humans didn't rely on a single technological breakthrough to dominate, they pursued every avenue, every possibility, no matter how unconventional. Vor noticed a prototype exosuit designed to enhance a soldier's physical capabilities, a weaponized satellite capable of firing energy beams from orbit, and even a neural interface allowing commanders to relay orders directly into the minds of their troops. It was as if humans refused to be bound by any limitation, constantly seeking to turn their weaknesses into strengths. As Vor moved toward the exit, a final display caught his attention. It was a quote etched into a holographic plaque, attributed to a human scientist. In every challenge, there is an opportunity. In every failure, a lesson. And in every enemy, a mirror. Vor stared at the words, letting them sink in. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology, their tactics, or even their resilience, it was their unyielding drive to learn and adapt. The Thalians had always prided themselves on their mastery of war, their ability to outthink and outmaneuver any opponent. Yet here was a species that didn't just master war, they reinvented it at every turn. Vor felt an unease unlike any he had experienced before. Humans didn't fight wars to prove their superiority or enforce their honor. They fought to survive, to innovate, and to ensure they would always be prepared for whatever came next. As he exited the innovation wing, Vor couldn't help but wonder, how could anyone hope to defeat a species that thrived on challenges, that turned every setback into a stepping stone for their evolution? The answer eluded him, and for the first time in his long career, Commander Rath Vor felt truly outmatched. Commander Rath Vor stood in the shadow of Earth's flag, the human symbol of unity, as he reflected on the sum of everything he had witnessed. This final chapter of his tour had brought him to the Academy's observation deck, a serene space with a clear view of Earth's surface below. It was meant to offer perspective, a place for visitors to contemplate what they had seen. For Vor, it was a place where his unease crystallized into something far more profound: fear. He gazed down at the planet, its vibrant blues and greens a stark contrast to the cold, mechanical efficiency he had encountered throughout his tour. On the surface, humanity's homeworld appeared peaceful, but Vor now understood that this tranquility was a facade. The humans had forged their calm from centuries of chaos, their peace hard-won through conflict and sacrifice. And beneath that calm lay a species that had turned adversity into an art form. Vor's mind replayed everything he had seen. The physical training that forged soldiers capable of enduring unimaginable hardships. The simulated battlefields where cadets mastered the art of sacrifice. The psychological conditioning that prepared them to make decisions no other species would dare confront. The relentless innovation that left no tool, no strategy, and no scientific boundary unexplored. It all painted a stark picture of humanity. They were not the strongest species, nor the most advanced, but they were undeniably the most adaptable. Their strength came not from any inherent superiority, but from their ability to turn every weakness into a weapon. Where other species saw limitations, humans saw opportunities. Vor thought back to the hall of sacrifice, where they revered those who had given everything for the greater good. It wasn't just their capacity for sacrifice that unnerved him, it was their ability to find meaning in it. Most species viewed loss as a failure. Humans saw it as a lesson, a stepping stone to something greater. Then there was the innovation wing, where Vor had come face to face with humanity's unrelenting ingenuity. The humans didn't just create technology, they wielded it like a scalpel, carving away their vulnerabilities and exposing their enemies' weaknesses. Vor shuddered at the memory of their bioengineered virus and cyber warfare tactics. Humanity's willingness to embrace even the darkest tools of war was both impressive and terrifying. As Vor stared out at the Earth, a question gnawed at him. How could such a species be defeated? His own kind, the Thalassians, had always relied on their superior discipline, honor, and strategy to dominate the battlefield. But against humans, those qualities felt insufficient. Honor was a luxury humanity discarded when survival was on the line. Strategy. Humans didn't follow the rules, they rewrote them. For centuries, the Thalassians had viewed humanity as a lesser species, one that had risen too quickly and burned too brightly to sustain itself. But Vor now understood the truth. Humans thrived in chaos. They didn't just survive conflict, they evolved through it, becoming stronger with every battle, every loss, every challenge. He thought about the quote he had seen in the innovation wing. In every enemy, a mirror. It lingered in his mind like a warning. Humanity didn't fight simply to win wars, they fought to understand themselves, to push their boundaries, and to ensure they would never again be caught unprepared. Vor realized that any species that underestimated them would be making a grave mistake. The sound of approaching footsteps broke his reverie. He turned to see one of the Academy's human overseers standing at a respectful distance, waiting to escort him back to his ship. Vor nodded, signaling he was ready, though he felt far from it. As he made his way toward the exit, he couldn't shake the weight of what he had learned. The Thalassian Dominion had sought to observe humanity, to assess their potential as allies or threats. Vor now knew there could be no alliance, the humans would never bow to any power, and any attempt to subjugate them would end in disaster. For the first time in his career, Commander Rathal Vor felt the crushing weight of his own ignorance. Humanity was not a species to be controlled or dominated. They were survivors, innovators, and above all, warriors in the truest sense of the word. As his ship lifted off from Earth, Vor cast one last glance at the planet below. It seemed so unassuming from this distance, a fragile world spinning in the void. But Vor knew better. This small, unremarkable planet was home to a species that had mastered the art of turning fragility into strength. When the Thalassian High Council asked for his report, Vor would have no choice but to speak the truth. Humanity was not to be underestimated. They were not the galaxy's most powerful species, but they were undeniably the most dangerous. And if war ever came to Earth, Vor realized, it wouldn't just be humanity's enemies that needed to prepare. It would be the galaxy itself. Thank you for joining us on this journey through human ingenuity and the chilling reaction of an alien commander. If you enjoyed this story, give it a thumbs up and share it with fellow sci-fi enthusiasts. Don't forget to subscribe to Starlight Sci-Fi for more epic tales of humanity's place in the cosmos. Until next time, keep dreaming of the stars.